T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast, episode 66, and with me, a combat classic today, Avenger 1. How you doing, buddy? Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Execute Order 66 has commenced.
We're
back.
Episode 66. Do it.
That's ironic because I'm such an Imperial fanboy, but yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be here. It's good to see you again, Keenan. I apologize. And it's good to just talk about combat, man.
Read it.
It's right. I had one job.
It's been a long, hot summer. I'm pretty sure, except for anybody who's down in the south. It's been cold, winter, whatever. I don't know, but up for us, Europe, America, where I'm at right now, Turkey, which is kind of Europe. It's been hot, but people have been inside, playing games, enjoying space, loving 30Ks. You, my friend, have been rocking LA on YouTube, I think, for a year now. I've been seeing your stuff popping up. Before we start to get into the topic, the combat, all the goods, I want to hear how it's been going for you. How's YouTube been treating you? How the stream's been treating you? How's Star Citizen treating you?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that. I mean, great. I'm honestly, truly incredible. I mean, it's like we were talking about this before we started here about, I owe a lot of my quote unquote success to you guys, to, guys like Level Cap and everyone else who's kind of, brought me into the fold, had good discussions and all that stuff. You know what I mean? I always say it at the end of my videos and at the end of my stream, like I couldn't do this without you, but it's true. You know what I mean? And, if we're all doing this together, we're all part of this big community, my success is your success and all these other guys too, because we're all pulling together, right? So
the community is strong, and we were talking about it before we started, but I've personally never been a part of a gaming community in a major way. I would, I'd go on like the file browser on Halo 3 and look for the stupidest videos and laugh with people, but I never got involved in a community. And it's really cool to see how the content creators will back each other up, have them on shows, do little things with videos or music and stuff. It's always been cool. So I'm happy to help you, man. Happy to have you on. Always glad to get into your streams as well and go and play the game together. We got to get some lessons in there at some point.
Just tell me when, baby. We'll do it anytime you want.
I've been having so much trouble getting in the game lately. It's just been news, updates, nonstop. I hope that as the game starts to settle down a little bit more, I can start playing more regularly. How's we
got Jump Town coming up.
Yeah, that's true. Isn't it live right now?
It should be live tonight. At least in like 4 or 5 hours, maybe. I'll have to check the schedule, but it's today, the all weekend, and then next weekend.
I'm personally, I didn't expect to miss it, but I'm waiting for Xenothreat. I realized that Xenothreat is my most interesting event, specifically because I can have a large part in it without doing combat. I know it's weird to say that in this specific episode because this is all combat and you are the combat person, but I personally am not that big into combat, and I love being like that support player who can, either be transporting stuff or tractor beaming stuff or just like making sure to keep up with the logistics. But do you like Xenothreat, Jump Town? What's your go-to?
So this might surprise you. But I really like the Xenothreat, but not for the reasons most people like it. Excuse me. When Xenothreat comes out, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just go there and I'll just get it into as many fights as I possibly can. And I feel like it's a hot spot for a lot of people. Some people get upset because it's like they're not looking for PvP content during that time, and I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings or piss people off, right? But at least I give myself a rule. I say, okay, I'm not going to go after the cargo ships. I'm not going to go after people that are AFK. I'm not going to shoot their ships. Like I'm just going after like the other pilots in terms of like if there's sabers out there and gladiuses and hornets. Like if they're combat ships and they're there for a fight, well, I'm going to see if I can get into as many fights as I can.
Yeah.
And I find that enjoyable. And sometimes you get teams of people who get a little frustrated and they say, we're gonna take this guy down, and that's what I'm looking for. It's like good. There's lots of there's content here.
Trying to get under their skin.
Well, I'm not. That's never the intention. It's the whole students of war thing, right? It's you want to go out and you want to test and put yourself in as many dynamic situations as possible, because it's one thing to get good at dueling, but then all of a sudden, what happens when a hurricane shows up and you're in an asteroid field and you've got different elements showing up, and it's all training. I mean, it's all different kinds of environments and opportunities to fight. And if you're like me, and your craft is combat, and your craft is a combat pilot, then exposing yourself to as many dynamic situations that put you at a disadvantage as possible is a good way to train, right? Because on top of the intensity training we do in the squadron amongst each other and amongst some of the other high tier pilots, what's important also is like the aspect of the sandbox. What happens when you've got two Connies that show up and they're putting a lot of missile pressure on people? What happens when you've got a hammerhead in the mix now? Like, you can't really train for that in a great way in free flight, when you're just doing dueling.
Mm-hmm.
And Xenothreat gives us a great opportunity to do that, and some people take it in strides, and some people say, hey, good fight, and it's a lot of fun. Some people get really upset, and that's fine, right? But I kind of try to gently remind people, like, hey guys, like PvP is a big part of this game, and if you're going to go out there in systems like Pyro later on, you've got to be able to defend yourself. Now I give myself a code, and the guys in the Avenger Squadron, we run by our own code. It's like we're trying not to involve ourselves in the Xenothreat operation in the sense that we're not trying to stop the operation, you know what I mean? We're not trying to kill the guys that are like taking. There's sometimes we'll see like Connies going back and forth and freelancers going back and forth, and they have the mission items on board. Yeah. And we won't shoot them, because it's like we're not trying to harass people that way, right? But like I said, if you're a combat ship, if you're in a Hornet, you're out there in a Gladius, killing the NPCs, it's like it says you're a target. Let's go. Let's have some battles.
Now, I have a question about that. So you go out into Xenothreat, particularly looking for a fight. You're not necessarily playing the lore. You're not saying, hey, we're teaming up with Xenothreat. We want to help them with their mission.
We do say that.
Yeah. Okay.
We do say that just for fun. We do say like, we're going to help Xenothreat, and we kind of play it a little bit. But there's only so much you can do because Xenothreat will also shoot us. So. Right.
And so what I was kind of going towards is that there are still many things in the game that make it so that a situation like this, where you guys, you want to fight and you want to be on the team that is able to fight, not necessarily just because, sorry, I'm fixing your camera, not necessarily just because you want to get out there to kill people, but you want to also be aligning with a group that brings you into more fights. Say, hey, if I earn reputation with Xenothreat, they suddenly start sending me missions that lead to more fighting and piracy opportunities. That's not necessarily in the game though. So like you can't show up into the place and people automatically know they have a reputation of helping Xenothreat, we need to attack them. Do you feel like there's going to be less of those people who are getting into global chat and telling you, hey, like you're ruining the game session? You said some people take it in stride, some people kind of get a little more angry. Do you think that anger will calm down as there are more tools in the game that make it clear that this is happening, or do you think it'll always be that way for you?
So, no, I don't think so. I think what's happening is, and so let's flip the script on this here for a second. Now, let's do a thought experiment. So let's say we were in Pyro, okay? And people were doing the NPC missions as part of the pirate faction. And a bunch of trolls from Stanton, who are security forces, who are the quote-unquote good guys, barge in on this pirate money-making operation and shoot all these people down. And the same issue happens again. I'm doing PvE. Why did you come in? Why did you come and barge into our PvE operation and PvP us away? Mm-hmm. So whether you're on the pirate side or you're on the UE side, it's the same problem, and it's usually the same kinds of individuals. It's a mindset and it's an idea. People seem to think that if they're doing player versus environment, that they have a right to be unbothered and to go about their business. And the truth is that's simply not the case. If you're in a sandbox environment in a sandbox game, you're going to have player interaction. And that's why, for me, I'm always trying to tell people it's like you need to prepare, because it's going to be, you're going to have times where you're doing your own thing, you're mining, you're doing PvE bounties, you're doing other aspects of the game, and boom, PvP happens. And it's not what you prepared for, it just happens, right? And so I don't think the negativity for some people will go away, because I think they've been brought up in this mindset, in this kind of attitude of, I shouldn't get PvP'd because maybe this is their first MMO. Maybe they're used to other types of games where PvP and PvE are separated. But in a sandbox environment, you don't really have a choice in that. So I don't think it'll go away. I think it'll always be there no matter what. No matter how clear cut you make the lines and distinctions between red team and blue team, or blue team, red team, doesn't matter. There will always be people out there who will feel entitled to their gameplay experience being uninterrupted by other players, right? And as much as people because that's the thing is, like, you can't have surprise and novelty in a game and then also have it where like you don't have access to PvP and stuff, like, because there will be times where that maybe something happened and then a player showed up and saved them, or a player showed up and helped them out at a time they really needed it, or a player was able to repair their ship and whatever. So there's all these dynamic surprises that are a good thing from player interactions, and then occasionally you have the negative side where this player shows up and they're here to kill you. So you can't have one without the other. If you want this dynamic experience, like imagine for a second, you're deep in space in Pyro, right? You're in a Kareah, something happens, you lose an engine, I don't know, maybe some new mechanics come into place, and you've got to put her down on a moon. You go into a cave, do some fun missions, whatever, but your Kareah is crippled. It has no fuel left, she's in trouble, and death matters now. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, a player pings you and says, like, hey, man, maybe you need some help or whatever, comes down and you figure it out together, bring some fuel. I don't know, something happens, right? You couldn't have that experience if you also had the experience where it was the flip side, where you were just doing your own thing, doing PvE, and all of a sudden, boom, a whole bunch of Buccaneers and the Cutlass show up, and it's like, guess what? You're not going nowhere.
Yeah, but that earlier experience can't happen right now. So what I wonder is how much better is the discourse going to be when that stuff can happen? When somebody can maybe get attacked by a pirate out of nowhere, but also has the ability to maybe easily jump away or easily drop some kind of countermeasures like a mine or a turret, like more of the small features that'll come in to flesh out that encounter. Do you think that that's going to lessen the friction in between these PvP encounters?
I think when the community gets separated more into different areas of the game, the tension will lessen. Whether it's, there's all kinds of tension I can see right now when it comes to mine laying. I think there's going to be a lot of trolls out there putting mines out there. So
yeah, mines all over Terra.
That might not be as great of a game mechanic as people might think. EVE Online had the same thing, and the mines got removed from the game because they were just so not enjoyable. And speaking from experience as an ex-soldier, mines are not fun, and there's a reason why they're so they're a very big no-no when it comes to military warfare. But anyway, point I'm trying to make is when we get people in Stanton who are enjoying Stanton with maybe less PvP, when we get people in Pyro who are more interested in PvP and more interested in the risk/reward stuff, which we can talk about Kareah, because that's a risk/reward mechanic that's, in my opinion, a really great step forward.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's all about execution. It's a great idea, but the execution has to be there. And I really do believe that the aspects of risk/reward have to be there. And when the community gets pulled into their niches, then there's not as much forced, overlap between these two communities. Then people can choose, and when they have the choice to engage more in unconsensual PvP, then the the tension and the friction will be less intense, because a lot of the problem comes from people getting engaged in PvP and they simply want no part of it. They maybe haven't trained. They only play an hour a day. They've got working kids, and they're like, I can't spend time, dealing with this, try hard Avenger 1. And I get it. I totally get it. You know what I mean? That's why, when we do the Xenothreat stuff, we try to just avoid the mission runners, and we just go for the combat ships and have some fun. But not every group out there has that kind of honor code. There are groups out there that actually will specifically target the transport ships because they know it messes with stuff, and they know it gets people riled up, and they're actually looking. They're really looking to see like the chat light up, and they're like, I got this guy, and that's how they get their fun. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is that kind of community is going to be very alive and well in Star Citizen. It's been in EVE Online. It's been in a lot of other MMOs. And the way you fight against those kinds of people is you prepare yourself and you make friends, and you don't hide from the realities of combat, and you don't hide away from the risks associated to that. And the better you prepare yourself, ironically enough, the people that are out there trying to cause as much drama as they can are usually the ones that give you the best salt once you start fighting back. Once the bully gets put into the locker, it's real funny to see the reactions.
It does sound like, though, that you do subscribe to the idea that the different locations, the way that they're trying to organize and compartmentalize the locations, the law systems, the jurisdictions that go with that, is going to help with separating people who maybe don't want to do it as much from people who do. And obviously there will be crossover. People want easy targets. They'll make that journey over there. In my opinion, it really comes down to how well CIG can moderate safe areas. How particularly they can dial the response of security in order to help new players understand, hey, there is some risk involved in this game, but when you're in this area where you just started, things aren't going to be as intense for you, while also still, giving them some exposure to that risk. Kind of like how it is in Stanton now, but more safe.
Well, what is safe to you?
I think if you're not gonna, if you can try out the game for an hour without having to run into the possibility of starting that hour over, nobody wants to restart their first hour. I think if you can make sure that somebody is protected for at least long enough for them to understand what the heck is going on in the game, then that's pretty good. But if you're going to say, hey, this is a new player experience, you started out in this space station, make sure to do a delivery down to the city below you just to teach them those kind of basic mechanics. If there's a good chance that they're going to get blown up in that single first trip in that 20 minutes, that's a really bad experience in my opinion.
Yeah.
You can teach someone it's risky, but I don't think you should expose them to it like that just yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm glad you said it that way, because people sometimes have this weird idea where they're like, I want no risk at all. And it's like, you got to be careful with that, because if you make blue zones basically, or green zones, you want to make as little green zones as you can. You know what I mean? But I'm okay with green zones. Like we had a green zone at Port Olisar. We had a green zone at when you landed. People can't just shoot you when you're landed on pads. But that's a kind of a temporary thing, I find,
I think the best way to go about it is to enforce those with in-game mechanics. At the very least, make it believable. If it's got to be the old GTA, hey, you killed a civilian, we're going to spawn some cops around the corner to take care of you kind of thing. As long as you're getting that feeling from the game, I think that goes a long way. Because nobody wants to just have an invisible wall. Nobody wants a mechanic that resembles an invisible wall cutting them off from gameplay.
Exactly. Yeah, the invisible wall stuff does suck you out of the immersion of the experience for sure. And there are ways to punish and protect areas that need to get protected. A big part of that is like having a AI system that, has credible, threatening AI. Because if they could stack 15 Idrises around Port Tressler, and me and my team could take those out and not lose anybody. So they got to have credible, threatening AI to protect the rookies.
It's gonna be complex.
But personally, for me, I have always felt like the best protection are other players. Excuse me.
Yeah, but we hate people.
An MMO where we hate people.
I don't play video games for people. My computer is my best friend.
I know. I agree that for your first hour of gameplay, it should exist in an area that is very protected. I'm okay with like the first gameplay loop for a rookie going from, let's say, New Babbage to the spaceport, and then to like I don't know, maybe somewhere else, somewhere that's very protected. But every step along that little cycle that they do, there's just Navy all around it. You know what I mean? There's a Navy patrol at the station, all that stuff. So it would be a lot less likely that someone is just going to get smoked in their first hour or 2 hours, right? But then once they leave that zone, right, then it's like, hey, you're in the Wild West. You got to get ready.
Yeah, and that scales. We're talking about Port Olisar here, but in 5 years, the starting zone might be Terra 1, and maybe that starting sort of safety net expands out to the entire system with gradients saying, hey, this place is a little more subject to pirates and stuff like that. But imagining the future where an entire system might be the starting system where people have some more confidence in that area, but maybe the jobs pay less. That kind of stuff is, I think, where the conversations are starting to head as we look at Pyro and then Nyx after that. And that's really exciting to me. I've been waiting for that for far too long.
Yeah. I mean, it's the classic issue of, you got everyone in the same melting pot, and this is, of course, before server meshing. When server meshing comes in, you're going to see a lot of growing pains. A lot of people are going to be very surprised at the reality of the situation, because the truth is that any group that can be subjugated or shot down on from another group is going to be the one that's going to be ultimately paying the price, right? So even though like the PvEers are not interested in PvP, they don't have a choice. And in a PvP engagement, they're going to lose. You know what I mean? So it's like the whole, you're on the schoolyard and one kid's got a big stick. It's like that kid's going to, whether you like him or not, he's probably going to run the show for a little bit because, he's got the big stick. And that's just human nature. And as much as we like to deny it, it's part of who we are as corporeal beings.
And hopefully, this is a long shot, but hopefully having the biggest stick in Star Citizen isn't necessarily having the most guns. I really do hope that economic power, resource control, those kinds of things actually make a difference in the way that this game plays out. Maybe that'll only be on the macro scale.
Logistics and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a tactical situation go your way, but then who's going to refuel the Idris? Who's going to refuel the bullets? How much are we going to be able to get our supply lines and our ships coming in to... Yeah, I agree. There is a very dynamic tactical battlefield situation that develops from a very large zoomed out view. And I'm hoping Star Citizen at least has some modicum of that kind of behavior, because for me, like not to harken back to EVE Online stuff, but we used to do stealth bombing stuff in EVE Online, and I ran a crew called the Bombers Bar. And when big alliances, I mean, I'm talking like 10, 20,000 player alliances would go to war with another, 2,000-3,000 player alliance. Battles would take weeks and months and sometimes years. And during this campaign, there would be systems that would be taken down, stations that would be destroyed. And it was something like akin to like the Dominion War from Star Trek DS9. You know what I mean? Like it's a very slow crawl, and every day you're getting updates of fleets that were destroyed. And and during that, it's like, who's fueling the stations? Who's bringing weapons and ammunition and gear to the locations that need to get refueled and resupplied? Did the camera bug out?
Yeah, you froze for a little bit.
That's kind of weird.
Should be back in.
Right, but we would run strike missions where we would take out the jump freighters. Would be full of fuel. We'd take out the logistics ships coming in with spare parts and spare equipment and spare weapons. We would take out all these others because we do it in cloak ships. And the ship that most resembles that in Star Citizen is the Eclipse, right? So I can see a future where you have a hunter-killer team of an Eclipse and maybe a recon ship, going specifically after, the larger ticket item ships that were maybe going to locations to resupply an alliance or a base or a player base that's on a planet and needs to get fueled and has stockpiles of weapons. And that will affect the larger battle, because who knows, maybe in a few days when whatever mechanic is put into the game that comes to any kind of zone control. Dealing with the logistics is going to be a really interesting aspect of the whole tactical battlefield.
Yeah, and that's kind of the dream I think people have of large org gameplay, and the idea that you're not. Yeah, you get the experience of Star Citizen in that you're first person, you're going in and out of these cargo ships, but then at the same time, you're also looking at it from the perspective of, say, an RTS game or even a 4X game like Stellaris. And like you said, getting the idea of the trade lanes, the supply lines. Where is this stuff? We have a base in this system, but we need a bunch of military ships in this one. How do we get them over there? That kind of stuff is very exciting. I think for me, it was the campaign for those early Battlefront games. You know, the Conquest ones where you'd get to go to each planet.
Fun,
you'd see how you creep across the map. Yeah, that's if CIG can figure out how to do these dynamic events on a large scale like you're talking about, and say, hey, human incursion into Vanduul space, and we can see that play out over the course of like and like we could see that play out over 6 months, and every month, maybe with the monthly reports, they give us a big update on what's going on. Like, if they can dive that deep into building the game around the community involvement, you could just keep going.
That's the dream, right? I mean, that's the dream. We should start small with, just player outposts is going to be a hell of a thing. You know what I mean? Because it depends on how CIG wants to set that up. Because let's be honest, there is a possibility that player outposts will go one of two ways. They'll kind of go the Ark survival route where you've got to be online basically 24/7, which has its pluses and minuses. Or they'll go another route, which is the route that I personally feel like they should consider is the more EVE Online route, where if a player's home gets attacked, there is a mechanic to give them an opportunity to mount some kind of defense, right? Because what would be really unfortunate is, I sign on US time zone, and then when I wake up, and I wake up at my outpost, everything's been destroyed because late in the evening at 2 a.m. at my time, a team from another part of the world came in and just destroyed everything with no contest because none of us were online, right? So unless you're like a multi-thousand person organization that can have people around the clock staffing it, it's just...
I think there's going to be some level of that. They talked about it a little bit, and they mentioned it in regards to the shards, and like, on one shard you might have a base and it won't be in the same place on a different shard, because how would that work when you have something happening on one shard that's not being updated in the other? But when it comes to, if you're loading in on the same shard every day and somebody happens to find out what the location of that base is, I could see that being a persistent thing. Obviously the ability to defend that base while you're not there is needed. Turrets and maybe NPCs and AI that you can hire for that kind of stuff. But it would be
NPCs
a little...
will never have the, unless they make the NPCs so ludicrously OP. But then it kind of takes the PvP element, because then even during the daytime when people are on, they're just going to let the NPCs deal with it, right?
Yeah, but what else can you do? You're proposing they just remove the base whenever people...
No. Hear me out. So okay. So at the beginning, when someone puts a base down, they put a base down. It's very temporary. It's very cheap. You know what I mean? Like, there's no real protection. You just put a little outpost down and it's there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then from there, you start to build the place out, right? You maybe put some towers up, some ballista towers, and some other stuff, and some homesteads and whatever. And then you want to put down a shield generator, right? So very much like we've all seen Star Wars Episode 1, when we have those bubble shields that surround whatever army they have, right? And it's up to how they want to handle that mechanic. And obviously these shield generators will take energy, it'll take fuel, they have to be powered, right? But the idea is, if your home base gets attacked, let's say at 2 a.m. in the morning, and someone drops an A2 bomb on there or whatever, the shields will automatically go up, either after an attack has happened. So maybe they do some damage and then the shield comes up right away to save fuel. Or before they log off for the evening, they say, hey, put the shields up. And, because we might get attacked tonight and we don't want to risk taking a hit on something. And in the morning when someone wakes up, they turn the shield off, and then how much fuel was used, then whatever, right? And if they do get attacked with the shield up, let's say, there's people online and they're on the same time zone. They're like, I want that base. They can shoot the shield until it's gone. But the shield, depending on how much fuel and stuff and logistics they have stored up, and how much fuel reserves they have, they might be able to keep that shield up for quite a while. Or depending on the kind of pressure that's being fired on, maybe indefinitely. Maybe you just need a certain amount of DPS to even crack the shield, right? So that way you have an opportunity to at least defend your stuff. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to have the DayZ problem, where people are just going to dig boxes underneath trees and scatter them throughout the world, and nobody's going to build a base, because why would you build a base?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got to. Yeah, it's. Give me 1 second.
Oh. Well, my camera is lost in the Matrix today.
Yeah, I think that's an internet thing, actually. For anybody who's listening to the audio version, we're having some camera problems. It looks like the internet's getting a lot of package loss on my side, or it might be on your side. I'm actually not sure. But so we were going to talk about Kareah and the changes that go to Kareah, and then after that we'll jump into this tier list. We'll have to fly on through for the latter half of this podcast episode. But the Kareah changes are divisive in the community. They have been a little bit polarizing because people are, mainly because it forces people to go to an area that's going to be PvP contested. You like the changes, though. What's your take? Give me your baseline take on this change.
Well, okay, I don't want to sound like an insensitive prick.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is very distracting. It's I could just hear it coming through my speakers. Is it possible for you to mute yourself while he's saying his piece? Because it's very difficult to hear. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so hear me out, and I want to express this as clearly as possible, and I don't want to make it sound like I am insensitive and telling people to nut up. Right? I agree with the scout post Kareah changes, or security post Kareah changes. However, I do feel personally that at least crime stats 1 and 2 should be payable at terminals, right? I think from crime stat 3, because crime stat 3 is when you can start getting bountied. It's when you've either committed murder or assault or something more extreme. At that point, from 3 on, you pretty much have to go to scout post Kareah to drop your crime stat, right? Some people don't like this, but my argument to this is, if you are committing crimes as egregious as murder, they should not just be wipeable willy-nilly from almost any location in the game, right? Many times, if you're bounty hunting somebody, by the time you get to the planet to track a bounty down, they're already gone, or they've already wiped their crime stat or whatever, right? And this can be highly frustrating. It also doesn't make for great kind of cat and mouse gameplay, right? I do think that CIG needs to consider taking away the God marker on a bounty, because that's a little bit unfair, knowing exactly where somebody is. I think at the very least, they should consider giving us a general area. Say, okay, he's within 500 meters. Where he is specifically in those 500 meters, who knows, right? But is my audio at least coming through well? Or is it...
Yeah, your audio is perfect.
Okay.
It's just a camera feed thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure people are not enjoying the visual.
Yeah,
quality.
I keep trying to get it fixed on this side. Wife is currently troubleshooting to see if it's an internet thing on my end, but it might be a CPU could be a encoding thing on your side. I am not seeing.
We did this last time and it worked fine, right?
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
changed nothing.
Normally this works fine.
Yeah, it's weird. Oh well. Anyway, so with Scout Post Kareah, like Security Post Kareah, it is going to drive PvP content to one location. Now, some people have said, I'm worried about camping. I'm worried about people, just waiting there all day for people with crime stats and stuff. And although there may be some people occasionally that are going to sit there and wait, I think if you're going to try and clear your crime stat, I don't see why, like if you're by yourself trying to clear your crime stat and you're trying to break into Kareah by yourself, like it's a pretty tall order, right? For crime stats 1 and 2, I think it's a little bit, unfortunate because there's going to be people getting sent to prison for stuff that really they have no business getting sent to prison for. And I guess it's kind of like the real prison system where some people get put away for the wrong reasons and they haven't committed any real crimes.
Yeah.
But, hashtag immersion, right? But for the first little bit, there's going to be some people getting a little bit upset and kind of rightfully so. But this is a great opportunity to engage in PvP. And also, it's a gentle reminder, like I was talking about one of my YouTube videos. It's CIG's gentle reminder to tell people, like, hey, higher risk, higher reward, right? And if you're going to clear your crime stat, you've got to take a bigger risk. You've got to get to Kareah. And hopefully you can come with some friends, because if you're trying to do it by yourself, you're going to have a bad time. You're most likely going to go to prison, right?
Yeah.
Another reason to play together. I think a lot of people, they play in these kind of bubbles, in these kind of, not echo chambers, but they play an MMO sandbox game by themselves a lot. And although they might have gotten used to playing by themselves, isn't the whole point of an open sandbox game to work together with people? And if you work together with people, is that not going to give you better results?
I don't believe that the purpose should be to force people to work together. I think that you should definitely have a benefit of working with people, but I do think that Star Citizen should also be the kind of game, and this is just my own personal take, that you can play alone, but then need to interact with players when the time comes. So in this instance, if you need an escort to help you get rid of a crime stat, that would be one of those times. But that equation changes once you're doing unlawful activity, because as a normally lawful player or a new player, you don't have the contacts that are willing to go against the official jurisdictional law in order to help you with your tasks. So then you are kind of forced into that situation of, hey, you need to have friends that are ready to storm a security outpost if you ever think you're going to end up getting into an episode. Or, sorry, if you're ever going to get into a take your crime set away. Sorry, somebody was just saying that audio died. Can you hear me still?
I could hear you.
Okay. But yeah, I agree with the idea that you should have to encounter and work with people, but I'm not sure people should be expected to have a group of, security post raiders ready to go with them if they accidentally get a crime stat.
But my answer to that is like, what then is the risk / reward, right? So if getting a crime stat and just being able to hack it away, like I said, anywhere without really anybody's help, it kind of devalues having a crime stat, right? Because there has to be risk associated to this. Now, at Security Post Kareah, we have essentially a jump town drug dispensing box, which could make a lot of money, right? And so you have very high risk, but you also have high reward now, right? And I think what's going to happen is CIG is going to make it so that doing criminal activities is going to make you more money, but it's going to be higher risk, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of people kind of dipping their toes in the life of crime, and then as soon as it gets too hot, they're just like, okay, I'll just wipe my crime stat. No, like you got to make a choice. You know what I mean? Like, are you going to go and crime, or are you going to, fight on the security side? This kind of like dipping their toes in and then clearing their crime stat whenever it gets inconvenient. People have gotten used to that, But I don't think that's how CIG wants to run this. It's like, if you're going to get sucked into a life of crime, like, you're going to go all the way, right? And if that's the case, then the only way for you to, clear your crime stat is to go to the central hub where the crime stat records are kept and clear your crime stat.
Yeah, but as you said, the lower crime stat levels don't really deserve all of that.
True.
Right? I think a fine.
Yes. 1 and 2 crime stats should be payable at a kiosk. That I will agree with. But I got a sneaky suspicion that CIG did this intentionally because they want to test out their crime mechanics, or they want to test out some of their Klesher stuff. And instead of asking people to go to prison, they're just going to send you there.
And that's and
so
see,
for the first little bit, they're like, okay, I think they know that 1 and 2 crime stat is too much, but I think they're doing it intentionally because they're like, we got to send people to Klesher and we got to get them to test this new stuff.
But even then, I feel like they should tell us, because even if they do say this to the community and, we worry if we say that it might change the way that people act, the majority of people are never going to know that they're actually doing that. And I don't think it would really change their results that much. But as it is right now, it definitely makes getting into the game a lot more nerve-wracking as a new player. If I was a new player and I saw that I could get a crime stat and end up in a situation where I need to spend an hour trying to relieve myself of that crime stat on top of needing to meet people and get geared up and go through this process that there really is no tutorial for, that's a pretty big turnoff.
Yeah, but what is so bad about getting sent to Klesher? In a sense that, like, if you're a new player and you commit a crime and then you get sent to, and you get sent to prison, like, I could see it being a little frustrating for sure, right? But if we don't have any kind of crime and punishment system, then like at some point, where does the coddling of the rookie overtake the design of the game? Does that make any sense? Maybe that's
I think when they're only updating half the law system with this, they're updating the consequential part of the law system without updating the informative part. They're not doing anything to help players understand what's going on. If you get a crime stat, all you're going to see is a little flash on the top of the screen. You might get a notification that says that you've committed damage to property or something like that. And then if you miss that in those 7-8 seconds, you have no idea what's going on as a new player, because it's not going to tell you go to your journal to find out what the laws are, the jurisdiction. It's not going to tell you go to Kareah to get rid of your crime stat. It's not going to tell you if you get caught, you're going to prison. They haven't updated that side of things. So I agree with you. They have to at some point overcome the coddling of rookies with the game design. They're not necessarily keeping the game up to date to help inform people and give them an easier way of understanding what's going on.
I think this is an opportunity, though, because I think CIG needs our help. Like, I really do. Like, that's where I think I had talked about this in Star Wars Squadrons when I was running that stuff. And I said, look, the devs can only do so much and they've got a lot on their plate. They got a bunch of stuff going on, whatever. So it's our job to help as best we can, right? It's kind of like a 50-50 split. It's like half of the responsibility lies on the community itself to help other members of the community understand these things. If CIG can't get a tutorial in place in a reasonable amount of time, because things are changing so much with the gameplay that, like, Todd Pappy said it on the last Inside Star Citizen. He said, we had a tutorial, but because so much is changing so much, you'd have to keep on updating it. It's like, it's way too much workflow. Yeah. So it's like, we're just going to not do a tutorial and let people try to figure it out. And that's why we as content creators have a responsibility to help educate people, to say, like, okay, it's changing, but like, we're much faster because we're self-employed essentially. You know what I mean? Like, we could just boom right away, something changed. We can make a video. We can help inform people. So I feel like sometimes we put 100% of the responsibility on Star Citizen devs and people, and we kind of forget that they're people too, and they're just doing a job. And we have an opportunity to mitigate some of the issues with the game and to make it a better environment for ourselves and other people. But some people would rather sit in the corner and say, that guy should do it. And then they don't help themselves. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if there are rookies out there who get crime stats and don't know what's going on, what if they had a video and then went on YouTube and they saw a video and it said, hey, if you're a rookie and you get sent to prison, don't feel bad. Here's what you do. Right. And then boom, just like that, they understand now what's going on. And I think that is one solution. Because it's one thing to like say, it's always CIG's fault and this and that, and then not provide solutions. I think one of the solutions is for people to, if you're playing an MMO game, to get involved with the community. And I think that when I started EVE Online, I was playing it by myself. I actually quit the game after the first like week because I was like, I can't do this. And then like a year later, I tried again, and I stayed because I met somebody who taught me the game. And I can't remember what I was doing. I think I was doing a mission, and I got shot down. And I was talking to chat like, hey, I need some money for another ship. And he's like, you're doing what? I'm like this, and he's like, oh, no, don't do that. And then I started flying with him, and it completely opened up like the game for me. I was like, I had no idea how the mechanics worked. And he's like, all these ships, he's like, hey, you want to use this and this, and this is why. And then the entire game just like completely blossomed in a beautiful way. And I feel like Star Citizen is the same kind of way, and probably why in the last year, the YouTube that I've been running has gone up in popularity, because how do you explain such a deep and nuanced kind of mechanic unless you show it? And like, because like there's so much going on and so much is changing that to have a tutorial for just combat, not to mention all the other aspects of SC, it takes like a full-time endeavor to really dive into, right? So
yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I started my YouTube channel as well. I wanted to be a channel where people could learn the stuff that CIG has trouble adding context to. But I think that applies to a certain level of thing. I think one of the most basic forms of gameplay, which is getting a crime stat, needs to have some context. In my opinion, I think this change would have been best done when they did the reputation update, so that you could start to understand better, hey, you didn't just go from you have nothing wrong with your reputation to now suddenly security's going to shoot you and throw you in prison as soon as they see you, giving them that kind of that gradient of, oh, you just took negative rep with this company, like watch out. A little warning pops up that says, if you continue to do things in this jurisdiction that cause problems, you're going to end up going to jail. See this list for more of the problems that you might cause that would cause that. But there's no context like that. And I really do worry about the people who are going to spend the first 2.5 or the first one of their 2.5 hours playing the game, typing in global chat, being like, hey, I got a crime stat. What do I need to do? And then getting walked through the process of going to buy some weapons, going to buy some armor, meeting up with the group of people who are willing to get into the station with them, going to that station, fighting through it, getting rid of their crime stat, and then finally getting to go to play the game. Like,
But isn't doing that also playing the game? Like, that's pretty exciting.
It is, but it's not.
Breaking into a security post with some buddies that you just met, shooting a bunch of guards, maybe even getting into a fight with a player. Like, that's exciting, man. I mean, that's
forced gameplay. That's forced. It is. Some players get into Star Citizen and don't even ever want to touch a gun, right? You got people who are getting in here and they just want to go and mine in a cave. Somebody just wants to do some cargo trucking. These people who have no interest whatsoever in combat. Why are those people
getting crime stats, is what I'm saying. Why are those miners and people getting crime stats?
Because maybe they bumped into another ship.
Okay, that I agree with. So, and again, why I think, having 1 or 2 star crime stats should be set as a fine that they can pay, right?
Yeah.
But let's say they bumped into someone and they killed them by accident, and it's like, and they get charged, and then they got a crime stat, and then they go to prison, right? Now, what I do for a living. You know that sometimes we have a lot of our car accidents and stuff, and there's a lot of people I go to where they feel like they didn't do nothing wrong, and there's someone who's really hurt. You know what I mean? And it's like they're gonna get held responsible for that. So if you make a mistake and someone dies, it doesn't matter if your intention was pure. You killed someone. Like, that's a serious crime. Like, you're going to go to prison.
Yeah.
And Star Citizen is no different. And that's how the crime system should work.
It is, yeah.
And
but they also need to communicate that.
Right. On the communication thing, I think CIG, even just a little bit, would help. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, what we can do is we can help educate people. Right. Because that's all we can do. I mean, I would love for CIG to make sure that they have these little tool tips and stuff like that. And maybe they are working on that. Because they said they have some tooltip system that they're pulling from Squadron 42.
Yeah. They're building something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, is like, that's why I think it's like a two-way street. Like, sometimes people, And like it's tough because like we've been waiting 10 years, like I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. Like I really do. You know what I mean? Like I get it, man. And it's like, but from the devs I talk to and stuff, I mean, they're pulling overtime all the time. They're working as hard as they can. And there's a lot of moving pieces that are going on. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling it like it is. So people can point the finger at SIG all day and be like, you guys make a shitty player experience and this and that. And they can be negative on Spectrum and stuff. But that's not going to fix the situation, right? What's going to help is by accepting the fact that right now there really isn't very many tooltips. And by telling CIG, hey, maybe you should do this, you know what I mean? And they are listening. But in the meantime, we could take the opportunity to make a couple YouTube videos and just help the people out as best we can. And you're gonna affect people's gameplay experience in a positive way if you do that. You won't catch them all. There's a certain attrition rate with new players that's just inherent with the process.
Absolutely. But especially something like this.
Yeah, but the nice part is because it's alpha, I think a lot of people might play it, and then if they don't get hooked or they don't get grabbed, they're like, whatever, I'll come back a year later. And they come back next year, you know what I mean? And it might be better then. And then they get grabbed and they're in, you know what I mean? So you kind of have multiple kicks at the cat with this, whereas like some games that are quote unquote finished and they get released, like Battlefield, and it's just not a good experience, people will just go like, yeah, I'm done, and they never come back, right? Now, obviously, if you're a company like EA Games, you've created a reputation of being really scummy, so there's not a lot of good faith there.
Yeah, but that's EA. But it's a good topic, and I think this is one of those things that it's not going to be a huge deal. No, I'm talking about it like it's going to ruin the new player experience. It won't be that much worse than what we already have. There's already plenty of frustrating things that happen to new players that make the experience not as fun. But I do think with the way the game is kind of starting to get played and the expectations that people are getting, they got to be careful. The commitment required for the mistake made can't get too unbalanced. And like you said, for level 1 and level 2 crime stat or whatever they decide to do with reputation, I think something as simple as like a fine, maybe you have to go to a place to physically pay that fine that then impacts your playtime and gives you a little bit more of a consequence. I think that'd be cool. But after you get to 3 to 4 level, I mean, I don't know what you're doing at that point. Like, yeah, go to prison, have to go to a security station.
A bad man.
Yeah, that's a lot of mistakes, friend.
Are they mistakes though?
Maybe you shouldn't have weapons on your ship, miner.
Oh God.
Yeah, so that is an interesting change, and I'm very interested to see how it goes down and what they do plan to do if they maybe by the time it goes live decide that those lower crime stat levels aren't gonna be required. Overall, though, an interesting sign for the law system in the future as a whole. They're definitely kind of consolidating it. They're saying, hey, you've got one place that you can go in this system, at least for now, where you can get this done. Are they also going to have an advocacy office where you can go to get jobs? I think there's one on RCorp. Are they also going to have Crusader security space stations where you can go that maybe have some other kind of extension going on? It kind of it teases a little bit about how much more they can expand the law system.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing this game is good at, it's firing up the imagination.
Yes, the hype train.
The hype train's got no brakes on this one, boys.
Listen, we got into a good talk, so we're actually probably gonna not do the tier list today. We're gonna do we're gonna rank all the combat ships. We'll have to do this another time on another live stream.
Yeah. I mean, I got lots of time if you want to do it, but
absolutely no. I mean,
3-hour podcast.
Yeah, I've got to get to my stream in a little bit, but I did want to talk a little bit more just about the YouTube content that you're making. You do a lot of fighting videos, combat videos, and you've been doing it for about a year. You've probably been playing the game longer than that. I don't actually know, but
since the beginning, baby. Cool.
So you've had plenty of time to watch this combat system evolve. You've really gotten into it at this point. You're teaching it, so you are one of the go-to people to really understand how it's going. How do you feel? Where do you feel it is in comparison to what might be expected for, say, a Squadron 42 launch?
We're 30% there.
What kind of stuff is really holding it back, in your opinion?
So it's less on the flight mechanic issue and more on the general, I guess you could say, like gameplay. There needs to be full system reworks for some things, like missiles, right? Electronic warfare, signature system, power management, heat. All these things dramatically affect combat. The behavior of the fighters and the way they're flying around the environment is better and is getting better always. And the new stuff that's coming out that Yogi's team's been working on, I'm very excited for. I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm excited for it, but if there's one thing that I feel like, if there's one guy that I feel like is going to pull this off, it's Yogi and his guys, because he does really understand like what's actually going on. So where the game will be in 3.18 or 3.19 or wherever we go from there is going to keep getting better and better and better. I think we're 30% there. And by 30%, I mean, like, because we still need a truly working missile system with better mechanics and stuff, like, I'd say the flight stuff is probably getting close to being finished. And then all the hookups, like the heat buildups and the power management, all that stuff, right? But the ships aren't necessarily going to physically fly that much different. Like they're still, you pull up, you're still going to pull 9Gs when you pull a corner.
Right.
But it's just like, it'll change the dynamic of the fight quite dramatically. Now, I'm a big fan of the power management system. Not how it's currently implemented, but the fact that it's in the game and how capacitor systems are working and all that stuff. And if they bring the heat in and they have a weapon pass where weapons really have different characteristics and they interact with each other well, it's going to be really exciting to see what happens. And I think we're like just at that tipping point where if you get into combat now, you're going to enjoy it and it's just going to get better from here. Whereas unfortunately, in the past, combat was kind of just doing one of these where it was good, it was bad, it was good, it was bad. It was really incoherent. And, 1 second they were doing this, next second they were doing this, and then they were doing this. And then I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, this felt good. Oh, now they're going to do something totally different. It's just like, oh my goodness. But now it seems to be like, it's less erratic and it's more like, okay, we've kind of figured it out now and it's starting to really mesh. And, I guess we'll have to see when the new flight changes come out if that's really true. I have a lot of faith in Yogi and his guys. I have a lot of faith in the team that's actually the ones designing it. And I'll be honest, for years I didn't. For years I was very critical of CIG. I was very upset.
Yeah.
Happy.
So that's my next. Sorry,
but that's my thought.
Well, that was going to be my next question was. Because for years, I would say, especially 2015 to 2020 or so, you would hear a lot of, or I would hear a lot of, I was still kind of on the fringe of the community, I would say, until 2018. But every once in a while it would come up that the PvP community or the dogfighting community was very unhappy with where the flight model was. It was very good early on. People were having great fun fights, and then 3.0 came in and things started to change and people were not very happy with it. It became strafe battles and jousting and it just wasn't a fun experience. When did that start to change?
3.15.
Okay.
For me,
that balance last year.
It changed in 3.15, yeah. When they went to bottom thruster power and the higher speeds and that kind of stuff, like it definitely felt better. It wasn't perfect. I mean, it's still not perfect. But it was fun. Do you know what I mean? Like it was fun. Yeah. It was engaging. It was deep enough to hold my attention. It was starting to feel more like I was flying a space fighter and less of like a mech. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
There are a lot of things I really enjoy about the current model now. And fighting at super ludicrous speeds is probably not really that exciting or that fun, but if they just get the speeds at a good spot, I still want to have high speed fights. I still want to have dynamic to be able to OODA loop people and to be able to pull people apart. They just, and again, weapon balance has a dramatic impact on this too. I mean, if time to kill was almost instant, like in DCS, the flight model we have now with the speeds would feel almost too slow. We'd be like, oh man, it's just like, you got 1 or 2 passes and then you're dead. So it would be really interesting to see, the dynamic change a bit. But because we have such ridiculously tough ships and they take so long to kill, and you've got some hit registration issues at really high speeds, fighting at those high speeds can feel very tedious. The fights can take a very long time. And if you've got 2 really good pilots, you can almost fight each other to a standstill where neither party can kill each other.
Mm-hmm. So for you, it really comes down to the flight itself is feeling better. The idea of where they're going with weapons is feeling better. It's the supporting features, the capacitors, the heat system, the power management, and that kind of that speed balance where they're talking about actually slowing down combat speeds. Hopefully not artificially. Hopefully they come up with a reasonable reason for that. But
who knows?
Is that's something you think will make a big difference?
So when you say slow down the speeds, I'm not really sure what that means, right?
Well, I'm taking the words out of their mouth.
Right. So maybe I'll rephrase it. I'm not sure what they mean. You know what I mean? So because if you played a game called Star Wars Squadrons, you'll notice that the fastest ship in the game was the TIE Defender at 270 meters per second.
Right.
Which is extremely slow compared to Star Citizen fighters, right? But the game felt very fast paced. Like you were very twitch orientated. Like you had to power manage and you had to think about stuff in a split second. Like, boom, I got to make a turn here.
Right.
So the game was slower, but it still was very fast and very engaging and very fun. And they had a great parity between mouse, keyboard, joystick, and controller. They all felt pretty competitive with each other. We had guys in tournaments that were on mouse, keyboard, and guys in tournaments that were on sticks, and guys in tournaments that had gamepads. So it's just, and they were all competitive with each other. So it is possible to make a game that is fair and fun for no matter what control scheme you've kind of put together. And I would like to believe that we could get to a point like that with Star Citizen. And
I hope so.
I think we are getting there.
Cool. That's good to hear. I do hope. I want it to be a fun experience, and I can see it. Maybe it's because I'm not very good, but I've never personally gotten super. I've enjoyed dogfights, but I think it's kind of a sense of speed almost, and what's the word? Like, I'm looking for more visceral.
You want to feel like you're going fast.
Reactions, yeah. The sounds of your ship getting hit, the sounds of even your thrusters and guns firing, that kind of stuff I hope will be made more apparent because I think that adds a lot to the experience.
I do too. They need a better force feedback system to make you feel and make you understand just how fast you're going. Because there's times where I'm going 600-700 meters per second and it's like I'm not moving.
Right.
Because it's in space. It's all relative. So
yeah.
And also too, it's like, at what point do we go for like a realism approach like BSG, and at what point do we go for a much more cinematic Star Wars type feel to it? Because you can kind of have both. Like you can have the feeling and the sound from Star Wars, but then the movement from like Battlestar Galactica. But you can't have both.
Yeah. And I think at least Chris has always erred more towards the Star Wars kind of cinematic. He even says dogfighters in space style when he used to talk about it. Maybe.
I mean, Star Citizen has always been much more akin to something like BSG than Star Wars, right? Even with our bottom thrusters, simulating lift, it's still way more like watching 2 Vipers fight than 2 X-Wings or an X-Wing and a TIE Fighter. Maybe with the new changes coming up, maybe with the quote unquote high speed combat, I could see 2 things happening. I could see space combat maneuvering being much more like your 6 degrees of freedom, nose to nose kind of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever mode they have that's going to handle their high speeds, or maybe it's all going to be one throttle, who knows? It might perform a bit more like how you would expect a typical space dogfighter to perform. kind of like how we have now. You know, I mean, if you're fighting at really high speeds, I mean, you can get up on people and outrate them, and just like normal fighters do today, and that really has a big dramatic effect on combat ships, right? So it's exciting, man. I mean, like I really do enjoy the combat in all its quirks and quirks. What it can be in the future is something very special, but even Star Citizen in its infinite form or infant design is still better than games like Elite Dangerous. Still better than games that are in the same genre, you know, and it's only getting better. Actually only getting better. Because like I said before, it was kind of getting worse for a while. And now it's like it's finally trending up. Do you know what I mean? And that gives a lot of people in the PvP community a lot of hope, because they're like, oh, finally, it's not great now, but it's getting better, and it's better from the last patch and the last patch, and like it's getting better and better and better.
Yeah, the progress helps.
That's what people want to see, man. Like we just want to see progress. We just want to see stuff moving in the right direction and having it feel and perform better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all part of this ride, you know, and whether you're part of the PvP community or the mining community or the trading community, every part of the game, no matter what community you ask, it's the same thing. They just want to see progress in the right direction. That's it.
Yeah.
And if they get that, then, you know, everyone will sit down and be like, okay, and they'll pledge more, and they'll have more fun, and there'll be more like positivity, you know. But like everything in life, it's like it takes time, and people need to be patient, and that sometimes is difficult for people, especially for me too. I like I said, we've all been there. I've been 10 years doing this, so
yeah,
you know.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm releasing a video that's almost exactly about that this week. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people are they're enjoying what they have and enjoying where it's going. They just want to see that it is heading in that direction. And more than ever, I think these last year and a half, maybe year, it's been actually happening, which has been really nice. One last question I've got for you on just this kind of idea of time to kill and combat speeds and all that stuff. When the damage map starts to have an actual effect and the systems are working, components are in, and the time to kill goes way up, now we're more focused on disabling ships. Maybe some people are looking to rob or board ships. Will your strategy change at all, or are you still going to be just going for the blow the ship up and move on to the next?
Well, that's kind of a multi-pronged question. So I don't think physicalized damage is going to have a massive impact on time to kill. I think in some situations the time to kill is actually going to be less, and maybe quite substantially. If they go for the opposite approach where they just make everything a giant bullet sponge, I don't think that's going to make for great gameplay. Because then you're going to have fights that are going to last like 3 minutes where you know the fight's over. You're just like, shoot for days. You're just like, oh my God. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, you know, the strategy of blow them up and move on, because that is the most effective way of eliminating a target. That's why we've decided to blow people up and move on. Now, if we can strip an engine off a Connie and it's out of the fight, and then we move to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, that's a different story, right? Or I don't know, whatever the fastest time to kill / disable is going to help you win the battle.
So you're just looking to win the battle. You don't need to kill someone.
I look at it from a military perspective, because I'm ex-military and that's how my brain works. But it's like when you eliminate an enemy, elimination doesn't mean that you've killed them. It means that they have no longer a credible player on the map, right? Yeah. So if you've hit them with a bomb and they're critically wounded and they're not able to fight back, they're not dead. They could survive, but they're not a credible threat to you or your team. Right. And so then you can move on to other tactical situations and assess the battlefield. Right. To go out of your way to maliciously kill them is taking away from your ability to win to win the battle, which is a stupid tactical decision and poor leadership if that is the direction that your team starts to go. Right. I'm more interested in winning battles. I'm more interested in winning the overall war. Because in my opinion, if you're a student of war and a student of combat in this game, to me, it's the most engaging moving chessboard that we're going to have, right? Now, if the fastest way to take a piece off the chessboard is to shoot the engine off or target the cockpit or target a specific spot on the ship to eliminate it, then that's great. Because when the battle is over and you see, 15 destroyed fighters and 2 hammerheads that are still alive, but they're crippled and they cannot fight back, that's a win. Do you know what I mean? Now, what you want to do with those hammerheads after, or Idris or whatever, is completely up to you.
Yeah, it's a different story.
If at that point you want to finish them with a torpedo and say like, see you later, or hail them and say like, look, your whole fighter screen's dead, your ship's crippled, you're dead. We're going to let you and your crew off and you're free to go, but the Idris is ours. Do you know what I mean? Like that's also an option too, right? And I've been trying to create that culture here in the squadron, where it's, we look at it in a mostly dispassionate view, where it's, there is a respect, hopefully, that will be given to each of our opponents. Now, even though sometimes they don't do it for us and we don't do it for them, we're trying to move in that direction. So later on in the persistent universe, when death really matters, we're only killing, not if we like absolutely need to, and obviously if you're gonna be a bit of a, interesting individual about it, then don't be surprised when you get a size 9 to the face if you run your mouth. But if people are give good fights and they're not dicks about it, it's like I see no reason why we wouldn't spend a little bit of extra energy to help these folks out, because there is a respect given to everyone who fights. You know what I mean? It's it's not personal, it's just part of the battle, right? And
if only everyone was like that.
That's fine. I mean, not everyone's going to be like that, and there are times where people will take advantage of that kind of mentality, right? But I think in the long run, I think it's better for our group to behave like this and to perform like this. And we won't be perfect, and there's times where I'm sure we'll just be bored and we'll be like, fuck it, blast them, right? But hopefully we can share a modicum of respect between our opponents, right?
Yeah.
But that's the future I see. Do you know what I mean? Like if we're able to win these battles, to not necessarily just, like I said, if someone punches out and if like Gladius a dogfight and they punch out, like I've told my guys before, it's like once we've cleared the battlefield and there's a bunch of enemies, who have punched out, we'll grab a Cuddy Red and we'll go collect them all up, put them in, you know what I mean, and bring them back, whatever, right?
Yeah.
That to me, I feel like is what I want to have the squadron perform like. What I don't want is we win a battle and then direct chat turns into a giant shit fest and people are like, commit suicide, bro. Oh, kill yourself. No one's going to come save you. Like, I'm not interested in behaving like that, and I find that to be obnoxious in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? There's always going to be a level of trash talk in any global chat, no matter what, right? But I try my best not to engage in it, and I try my best to shake hands after engagements, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I'm still working on. We're all working on that.
I think there's going to be some pretty big, I hope combat changes when that happens, because I would love to be the person who boards ships after they're disabled. If I'm going to be involved in combat, that's where I would love to be involved. So I hope that starts to change up the way that we do battle, whether it be between NPCs or players. But we'll have to wait and see, as we have been for quite a while for that change. The procedural damage, components, and all that stuff. That's been one we've been looking at for a long time and waiting for. But anyways, Avenger.
Boarding is going to be a blast.
Yeah, I can't wait. But I have to. Dude, tell the folks, the good people who have come to this podcast, thank you, by the way, for watching or listening. Tell them where they can find your own content, learn a little bit more of the combat game.
You can find me on Twitch at Avenger__1, and you can find me on YouTube at Avenger1. And you can find me on the Tomato Podcast.
Hey, is that Avenger one like the word one afterward?
Yes, the word ONE.
Cool. And of course, like he said, you can find him on the podcast right here. Whether you're watching on the YouTube channel, listening on your favorite podcast platform, or if you'd like, you can go check out, I think we've done 2 episodes now together before this, so this will be number 3. We did a couple earlier March-ish time, I think, April-ish, and we did one just me and you, and then we did one with Ferrister where we talked about piracy versus griefing and kind of that whole conversation.
Yes, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, some good talk, so definitely go check those out. I'll make sure to link them in the show notes for you if you'd like to for easy access. But again, Thank you, everybody, for coming to watch and listen. Thank you, supporters, for being here live to check out this conversation. And thank you, Avenger One, for another good talk about Star Citizen.
Anytime, buddy.
And with that, we will see you all next week.